welcome to the 12th episode of Ada the Autistic Alien. I'm very happy that you're here with me today. And yeah, I already made it to the 12th episode. I can't believe it. How time flies, doesn't it? Anyway, so today I want to talk about the principle of Ahimsa. Maybe you are already familiar with it because you do yoga or have some kind of Buddhist or Hindu background. But if you don't, Ahimsa is the principle of non-violence. It is found in many different religions like Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, and so on. And I want to talk about it because in the last episode, I'll let shine through a little bit that I'm confronted with a lot of violence at the moment. And because of that, I really wanted to look into it. Because I'm not a person that usually just deflects what's showing itself, but I really want to get to the ground of things. And the way I do that is by really putting a label onto something, like a word, yeah? And in that moment, it's violence. Like, I know that for a lot of people, violence means physical violence. And that's not what's happening right now. Like, you don't have to be afraid. I'm not like getting beaten up or anything. But I just noticed a lot of violence in the way I treat myself, in the way others treat me, in the way I treat others. And I just really like to nail it down to one point. Because from a shamanic point of view, there are 4 types of violence. So there is the physical violence, which we are all familiar with, like beating, pushing, all that stuff. But then there is emotional violence. So that, for example, is emotional manipulation. Like when people start to cry to get what they want, that's emotional manipulation. And then there's mental violence. Mental violence is, for example, mental violence is something that we mostly do to ourselves and then we mirror it on the outside. So mental violence is you have to be happy with what you have, although it doesn't feel good to you. And like you beat yourself up every time that you actually wish for betterment, but you don't allow yourself to become better or take the certain steps to become better for whatever reason. That's mental violence. And once we do that to ourselves, we also do it to others. So there is a lot of mental violence on the outside. Like also, for example, like if you want to build your own business and you tell people about it and the first thing they tell you, oh, but like, isn't that very risky? Are you sure you want to do that? Like really question what you are doing. They are projecting their own fear onto you, and that's mental violence. Okay? So I'm just like taking some examples to explain it to you. And then there's astral violence. So astral violence is creating visions of fear and panic in others. So for example, like actually the whole horror movies genre goes under astral violence. Like where, let's say like splatter movies or physical violence, the horror movies like thrillers, like, you know, like those movies where afterwards you can't sleep because maybe there is like this weird entity that will come and eat your soul during the night. That's astral violence because it actually, you know, and now I want to go into how I perceive violence. In my opinion, and I have a very strong opinion on this one, violence is everything that does not let something be what it is completely. Yeah, so violence is any kind of unnatural border. Not borders per se, because we all need limits, we all have limitations, that's natural. But unnatural borders, unnatural limits are violence. Yeah? So if a child wants to play around and move its body and it's put into school and told that it has to sit down for 8 hours, that's violence. Okay? And I'm trying, like, I'm going into this right now also because I talked before about systemical violence. And I feel like it's very hard to describe systemical violence because it's everywhere. And with this approach that I'm taking on today, I feel like maybe I can explain a little bit more in depth where systemical violence goes. Because, in my eyes, violence comes up when there is not enough space for the individual to be accepted as is. Yeah? Like, we can look at that in, like, smaller tribes. Smaller tribes usually, like, unless they have some kind of religious belief that works against that, usually they do not, like, exclude disabled people from their everyday life. They do not exclude old people from their everyday life. Everyone is included, and they work with the people according to their own capacities. Yeah? But the more people we get, and actually studies have shown that the human mind is able to, like, accept like 30,000, I think, but I'm not sure about the number right now, around 30,000 people as their own tribe. And that's where it ends. Like, we are, like, from our mind, not capable to belong to a bigger number than that. And that's where, like, the whole globalism was really a bad idea. Also the European Union was a very bad idea for that reason, because we didn't study the psychologics of it first. Yeah. So if I'm in a country, like I'm in Switzerland right now, Switzerland already has like 8 million inhabitants. Yeah. So there is no way for me to grasp how many individuals there are and like what their special needs are. And to hand that over to a system will lead to violence, because that's the only way how you can do that. If you want to control so many people under one umbrella, and even if it's only 8 million, which is nothing, like that's how many people live in Berlin, which is one city, and we have one country here with that many inhabitants. But that's already too many for me to really feel like I'm a part of all these people. That's not like my tribe. My tribe is smaller. That's where I can really understand the workings. That's where I can actually know everyone some way or the other. Yeah? So whenever systems are being put in place because there are too many people that are like being kept under one umbrella, because that's why we had tribes before. And that's why nobody was actually interested in building these huge imperials, and you know what I mean? Like, nobody was interested in that because from a natural point of view, it doesn't make sense. We will become violent when we lose this space where people can really be themselves and be, like, included into the society as they are. Yeah? That's when we become violent. Because then suddenly also there's not enough food for everyone, and we, like, you know what I mean? It's also like you can look at that in families or in neighborhoods. Do people really care for each other if it's a good neighborhood or a good family? But it doesn't like get much larger than that, because that's where they have their oxytocin. Like, this is chemical shit, I'm not talking about, like, on one hand I'm really talking about psychology, which this was proven. And then on the other hand, I'm talking about chemistry. Because, like, oxytocin is our hormone for connection. And it has shown that the same hormone that makes us build connections is also, for example, the hormone why jealous people beat other people up. Because with oxytocin, you really feel like you belong to that group. And whatever will harm that group harms you, because you love the oxytocin that you get from that group. And so you will harm whatever might harm that group. And that's where racism comes from a lot of times, is that. So we really have to look at how we are as chemical beings, and not like, this is also violence that we constantly do to ourselves, is that the mind is above everything. The mental body is such a fucker because he believes like, oh yeah, I can think of everything logically, I'm the best. Yeah. But the thing is that look at you, look at the system you built. It's not good. And that's also because you took over too much responsibility. Yeah? And I want to talk about why the mental body took over too much responsibility. And that's because of the Catholic Church and of all the religions that were dogmatic and that kind of also took over like kind of an emperor vibe and felt like they had to intrude the whole world with their only one truth. Why? Because if there's only one truth, that's violence. There is not only one truth in a world like this. Never. So when there's violence on the outside, like for example the violence that there is only one truth and everybody has to obey to that truth, then this becomes internalized violence. Yeah? Like, humans want to belong. We want oxytocin. The reason why all of humanity is addicted to some drug or self-harming behavior is because we built a world where we all have way too little oxytocin. I want to cover this in another episode because oxytocin is a huge subject and there is like so many layers to it. But for today, so what currently is on and what religions did is like you belong to us when you accept our own one truth. And otherwise you don't belong. And the human wanted to belong. So he took over that one truth, and some of his own truth didn't match with that one truth, which is normal because there is no one truth, yeah? So that's when he internalized the violence because he wanted to belong so much. And that's where we fuck ourselves over, even modern humans, because we want to belong. We fuck over our own truth. We fuck over our own authenticity because we want to belong. And so we internalize violence. So let's stay with this example of the person that's religious. So this person wants to belong to this religion because it gives them oxytocin. It gives them a sense of belonging, a sense of reason, yeah? And I don't want to question that. That's very valid. You know, we need that. And it's a mental thing to say, oh, we don't need that, we're above that all. No, we are physical beings right now. So we need that, what our physical body needs. And so this person wants to belong to this religion, but then they are gay. And this religion says that all gay people go to hell. So what this person internalizes is that they only belong if they suppress one part of themselves, and that's violence. Violence is always suppression. It's to suppress something because I don't want to show it because it doesn't belong, it doesn't fit in. And this internalized violence will then mirror itself on the outside in external violent behavior. You know? Like for example, parents abandoning their children because they are gay, because some weird God said so. And I read the Bible, and my God never said that. Or like, he's not my God per se, but the God that I perceived in the Bible never said that gayness is a problem. Or homosexuality is a problem. You know, so it's like, that's where it gets very, very strong. Because we all want to belong somewhere. So, you know, once you turn against religion, you turn against the sense of people that want to belong or their sense of belonging. And I don't want to do that. But it's so important that first and foremost, we should belong to our own hearts and our own truths. And understand that there are as many truths as there are humans. And no God can actually be a God if he harms you when you live your own truth without harming anybody else. Because that's what Ahimsa is about. It's about non-violence. It's about not harming others. And what I don't like about the implication that a lot of times is given with that is that harm yourself so you don't harm others. And that's not what Ahimsa is about. Ahimsa is about do not harm yourself and do not harm others. So the path of Ahimsa, in my eyes, is what the modern man needs most, but also what will take so much time because there is so much violence everywhere still, you know? Like, I realize that now that I'm creating a lot of safe spaces for my clients, that actually the problem is that the world is not a safe space. The world is full of triggers and it's full of attacks and it's full of violence. It's full of marketing. Like, who actually gave the right to some advertisers to cover all the world with their advertisements? That's violence. That's astral violence. It's currently telling me you need more to be happy. You need that to be happy. You need more to be happy. And it's psychologically framed and nobody is protecting me from that. So that's astral violence and that's systemical violence and it's within the system. It's not a person is to blame for that. It's just the system works exactly as it was intended to work. The problem is that the system doesn't fit the human. So we don't need to repair the system. We need to break it because it's fucked up. It's a bad system. It's working perfectly, but it's a bad system because we paid, the price that is paid is our soul. Because the more we are in this violence, the more we dissociate, the more we need drugs like Xanax or Adderall or weed or coke or whatever to actually cope with the violence that we are exposed to all the time. And the first step towards a more peaceful outside is to understand that we all have violence within us. Now, as I said before, why violence? Because it's about suppressing something. So if someone or a situation shows something I don't want to see, the modern human go-to solution is to suppress what I don't want to see. So we can take a lot of examples for that, right? Like cosmetic surgery, anti-aging products. That's only the superficial thing, but then also whenever you talk about taboo stuff, there is a lot of violence in there. You get suppressed and you get kind of gaslighted into not talking about what is currently inconvenient to the other because they would have to face their own truths and so on. So I want to give you an example from the left-hand path and the right-hand path that I covered in the last episode. So the right-hand path is much more popular because you do steps to receive results. So your mental body feels safe. Oh, sure, I can now do a yoga class because I am a certified yoga teacher. In the left-hand path, one most probably, like I did, starts to work with their own physical body and gets trained directly through the body's innate knowledge and inner guidance through spirit. There is no explanation. It can get created. I can create a right-hand path structure from left-hand path insights. But there is no explanation before practice happens. Actually, practice kind of just overcomes me. All I have to do is be in a space of reception and openness. I actually even believe that all current right-hand path systems stem from left-hand path insights, because that's the natural flow of information through our bodies, like left, heart, right. So in through the left hand, through the heart space, and then out through the right. And the reason why the witches were burned is because they followed the left-hand path. In the left-hand path, there is no guarantee. There is only trust. I, as a shaman, have to fully trust that I will receive the information that I am allowed to receive, and I will not receive the information that I am not allowed to receive. Plus also that if I do not receive information, there is a reason for that. So this system only works for humans who are not afraid. Because once a human is afraid, they cannot trust anymore. Yeah? And trust is the main ingredient for the left-hand path to work. Yeah? I believe that's why we are still giving, I like yoga and all that stuff, but it's so old. And everyone's like, oh yeah, it's so old. And I'm like, yeah, it's so old, man. Like, how can it be accurate? Like, these guys that wrote that shit, they lived 7,000 years ago. How can it be accurate for today's human? We evolved a lot, like tons and tons and tons. When you look at the Vedas, like, there are Ahimsa in the beginning. It wasn't like the main topic, it wasn't that important. And I strongly believe that's simply because they didn't need it at that point. It wasn't that important because it was a state of being to not be violent. And the more we entered into the Kali Yuga, or the Dark Age, the more it got important. Oh fuck, now we get into the Dark Age. Now there will be conflict. So it's good to have a principle called Ahimsa, non-violence, to get us through so we don't accumulate like tons and tons and tons of karma while being in that Dark Age. Yeah? So it got more and more popular until the end of the Vedas is like a very important and main principle. And if you look at the religions like that it influenced, or that there is a part that it is a part of, you can also see that the younger the religion, the more important or the more emphasis is on Ahimsa. And I believe strongly that's because we needed that. Yeah? Because the more we entered the Dark Ages, the more fear came up and all these like emotions and states of mind that were not that accurate before. And that's why, like, I believe that the reason why we still work with yoga and Ayurveda and all that very, very ancient stuff is because we stopped using the left-hand path. Yeah, it's because, or like, not many still do. I believe that Carl Gustav Jung, like did the left-hand path, and because I'm a follower of him, I also like work with that principle, or maybe also because it's in my genes, because I feel like I have this in my lineage. So, but like I see, or Elizabeth Kubler-Ross also worked with the left-hand path. So you can see everyone that brought something like really new into the world, that is valid and that is of structure and that is of like intensity and truth, they worked with the left-hand path. Even LSD got like discovered on the left-hand path by just like, oh yeah, creating something, not even using it, and then just trying it for the sake of it, or like, no, actually having it like accidentally and then trying it. That's the left-hand path. Yeah? Like, if he would have followed the right-hand path, Albert Hoffman would have studied like very strongly what are these effects, and then he would have tried it. But no, he used the left-hand path. He just jumped right into it and had his like famous bicycle ride. Yeah? So I strongly believe that if we want to recreate the world, and as I said, not destroy an old system or not like repair it, just replace it, create a new system that makes the old system obsolete. The only way to do that is if we all start to follow the left-hand path again, to follow the path of reception and not copying everything that was done 7,000 years ago, because we have changed. Our systems have changed. Our energetic systems have changed. Like, for sure, we still have all the chakras and all that stuff, but even they have changed. We are in a different reality right now. Yeah, we're 7,000 or 6,000 years later. So, yeah. But now, back to the witches that were burned. Sorry, sometimes I just have like these loops of information. I hope that's okay. And that you can still follow me. So, as I said, the left-hand path only works for humans who are not afraid. Hence, the more dogmatic religions like Catholicism took over Europe, the more the left-hand path was feared. See, Catholicism works over fear, although that's not what's written in the Bible. Hell and heaven are man-made concepts, yet these concepts were spread so intrusively that they were able to form a field of fear within humans. The same goes for Judaism and all of the religions that work over fear. And once a human is scared, he needs mental reasoning to feel safe. That's a natural order, yeah? If you feel physically and emotionally unsafe, you will make sure that you are mentally safe. That's normal. That's normal human behavior. So, from the point onwards, when people were afraid, the left-hand path was scaring them because it is not logically graspable in the moment of its happening. Hence, all the violence turns against the witches in the Dark Ages. And of course, there was a lot of propaganda as well. So, I actually strongly believe that the way to Ahimsa is over trust and acceptance. Two very actually divine feminine concepts, yeah? The male concept is changing, action. And the female concept is accepting and being with what is, yeah? Normally, the modern human is like, oh, yeah, we have violence in the system. Oh, let's get rid of the violence. But that's not how the female path works. The female path works over, why is there violence in the system? Let's be with the violence in the system first. Because, it's like if you have weeds in your garden, yeah? If you only go there and you rip out the weeds, but you do not understand where the root system is, they will grow again and again and again, yeah? So you first have to be with the weeds and understand why they grew there. And maybe if there is even a benefit of them growing there, and then you can take care of them being somewhere else or being destroyed or whatever. And that's the female path. Or let's say that's already the female and the male path in symbiosis. First, I accept everything that is, and I am with it in its fullness, in its totalness. And then I see which steps I can take. Yeah? So, when we all carry internalized violence, as I believe, because on one level or the other, we all do. Yeah, we all grew up in this system. So I never met a person who doesn't carry any kind of violence, against themselves or against others. And again, I'm talking about a very basic term here. Yeah, but I really hope I was able to explain it to you a little bit, what I mean with violence, so that you don't feel like I just put something onto you. And it can still be that you have no violence whatsoever in your system. It's just that I never met a person that was in that state already. Not even the Dalai Lama, it's not, people have these projections onto people that have a good access to the spiritual world, but we are human too. We are all human. So we all go through the human experience. And making us godlike will not help anybody, yeah? We're all on the path and we're here to do it, yeah? There's no one better or worse. It's just we are all on our own path. So, and when we really understand or can accept this fact without judgment and looking at how it plays out in our inner and outer realities, that would be step one. If you look at it from a right-hand path, acceptance. Embracing the fact that I and everyone else deserve better, and knowing that there are simple ways to transform this violence into peace is step two, trust. And, we really believe that acceptance and trust are things that just come to us. Because mentally, you cannot really work for that, can you? Now, that's again the illusion of the mental body of being alone, because you can actually work on that, yeah? By just right now being with whatever disturbs you the most and accept it. And you will understand then that accepting is an emotional thing. It's not mental. And that's why in a world where everything is tuned into your mental body, everything, the terms that you need more of your bodies to fully understand them, you just say, the mental body just goes oh yeah, acceptance, oh yeah, trust, oh yeah. Because it's not his job. So he will just put it there. Oh, it's a nice word to have. Oh yeah, I'm accepting, I'm trusting. But no, it's messy work, To really accept the situation as it is when it really triggers you, that's fucking hard work. And it's emotional work, yeah? on like going into your solar plexus and your heart chakra and really looking at where do the triggers come from? Why am I triggered? And to accept as is, what is the situation teaching me? What did I ask for or wish for that maybe this is the journey towards to? Yeah. I asked for beautiful relationships in my life. More beautiful relationships and a partner. And I strongly believe that the situation I'm in right now is because this violence was also in my relationships all the time. So I can now either feel cursed because there's so much violence, or I can feel blessed because there's so much violence. And I can look at the violence because there's so much of it, I really have to work with it. Like, I cannot push it away anymore, because before the violence was only against me. And if it's only against me, which is already stupid to say, but if it's only against me, then I don't really work with it. But once it turns against others, or I understand that it makes others feel uncomfortable, I for sure will work with it. Now, that's also a fucked up thing, but that's just like self-worth things that also, through systemical violence, we all have problems with our self-worth. Yeah? Because it's just, yeah, the system is not made for humans. And I really pray that humans will soon understand that this is the case. But until then, we have to work on it ourselves. So, because also, this is also work I do a lot with acceptance and trust. Like accepting the system as it is, understanding that it is the system that will get us to a more beautiful reality, and trusting that that's actually what will happen. And whenever I doubt it, or whenever I feel down, sitting down with the triggers and looking at why I don't believe anymore that this will happen, or why I don't trust. Because I don't have to trust in humans. I have to trust in life and in the universe, which is way bigger and way more mysterious and way more wise than humans will ever be. So that's a beautiful thing as well. And then to end this episode, I want to share a technique with you. It's one of the techniques I work with on my path towards Ahimsa, and it's called the Ho'oponopono. It stems from Hawaii's healing culture called Huna, and is a prayer of forgiveness. You can actually find many versions of it online. And the reason why Ho'oponopono is so powerful is because it is rooted in the truth that we are all individual expressions of the same source. So when I forgive you, I also forgive myself. When I forgive myself, I also forgive you. Because, when we dive into topics like violence, there will be memories of people who did violence to us. Like, I remember everyone that ever beat me up. I remember everyone that was mentally, astrally, or emotionally violent to me. And it's very important to understand that violent people are violent. So violent people suffer from their violence themselves. Like, for sure, there might be some exclusions, like people who really like to give pain to others, but then we don't talk about those. We just talk about the general, because then that's a whole nother psychological level of this story. But generally, humans don't want to hurt and don't want to be hurt. That's our natural instinct. Yeah. And when people hurt, it's because they hurt themselves. And with Ho'oponopono, we forgive ourselves, and we also say sorry to ourselves for maybe being violent to ourselves. And that's what's really healing, I believe that the strong magic of this prayer comes from acknowledging that I'm sorry to myself for having actually internalized all this violence, and also apologize to you for putting it onto you or externalizing it again onto you. And I own that everyone who ever did violence to me did it because he also had violence within him. So it creates kind of like this ripple effect, Yeah, where it invites so much forgiveness and light into certain bonds and fields that it's also easier to just let all of this go, let it float away and be okay. Harm was done, was healed, and it's okay now. And I feel like this place of forgiveness and trust is where we can reach ahimsa, where we are not violent towards ourselves anymore and towards others. And the Ho'oponopono as a prayer of forgiveness can assist in healing wounds that we inflicted upon ourselves subconsciously. That's what I also realized. Like sometimes I do it and I have to cry very strongly. And then I realized that there I kind of hit a wound that was inside of me that I kind of inflicted on myself by internalizing some violence. And then I really feel how it like leaves my system, and I don't even need to know what it was exactly. And that's the beauty of it, because I don't believe that we always have to go into every situation again and again and again and just like reliving the trauma. Yeah, in the end, like this is a very beautiful technique to just do that in a peaceful way without using too much of the mental body. And yeah, whatever we heal within, we also heal without. So whatever violence we heal within ourselves, the more violence we heal outside of ourselves. So I believe that that's actually the way how we create a new system. Is not that we actually have to use our mental bodies and sit down and write a way how we could work out a system that like would make capitalism and neoliberalism and politics obsolete. I actually believe that we all, like if every human does the work to really annihilate violence within themselves, then there will be no violence on the outside anymore. And for sure, it would be easier if there was no violence on the outside. But as I said before, Earth's a pretty rough school. So we kind of wanted it that rough because that's how you learn very much and very quick and, yeah, very lasting, let's say. So, yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you can't find a good explanation, or like if you don't feel good with the prayers you found of the Ho'oponopono online, you can write me an email to info@dadachi.com and I will reply to you and send you the prayer I use so you can use it for yourself. Yeah, so I wish you a lovely week ahead, and I hope to hear you next week again for the 13th episode of Arat the Autistic Alien. And yeah, thank you so much for listening and for being here. Send you much love and all the best. Bye bye.